Welcome to the 40th in our Unicorn Leader interview series here on the C-Suite podcast. My name is Russell Goldsmith, and together with Debbie West, we are thrilled to be joined online from Puerto Rico, which is certainly a first for us, by Jeff Radke, the CEO and co-founder of Accelerant, a rapidly growing data-driven risk exchange that connects specialty underwriters with risk capital providers. Founded in 2018, Accelerant reached unicorn status in 2022 with a valuation of $2.1 billion after having raised in excess of $190 million. Welcome to the show, Jeff. Can we start by you giving us a little bit of background to Accelerant?
Well, I think we should start with recognition of a milestone. I had no idea I was going to be at the 40th.
Oh, there you
how
go.
Remarkable. So Debbie, Russ, congratulations to you guys. I feel honored to be on for the milestone. I can only imagine how much hard work. So as a builder, you have to take a moment to enjoy these moments. So congratulations to you guys.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sure. So much less interestingly, a little bit about me. I think you asked, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jeff Radke, currently serve as the CEO of Accelerant, along with about 350 other people, roughly now. My background, pretty much exclusively in the insurance and reinsurance markets, 37 years, I guess. Ooh, geez, I don't know how that happens. Almost equally split between reinsurance broking, reinsurance underwriting, and then more lately specialty insurance, both in the U.S. and particularly at Lloyd's. So that's kind of my background.
Excellent. And can you tell us a little bit more about Accelerant, the company?
Sure. Well, thank you for the very nice lead-in. But Accelerant was founded on the idea in 2018. About 5 or 6 of us. Maybe that's not fair. There might have been slightly more. I think there were 8 that were right around the hoop, as they say in America in the beginning. And we had 2 observations. And depending on which part of the market you grew up in, we tended to have one or the other. Rarely did any of us have both, I don't think. But one of them was from the reinsurance perspective. Over the course of my career, or anyone else's career over the past 30 years, by far the biggest difference is that when I started, about half of your book of business as a reinsurer would be relatively low volatility, perhaps low return or lower return, sort of proportional business and risk excess business. And then the other half of your book would be the spicier stuff, catastrophe or high excess liability, where you'd make, hopefully, a lot of money, or certainly the opposite was also true some years where you'd lose quite a bit of money. But it kind of ballasted it out, it balanced out. Well, as the insurance companies got bigger over the decades, they started to assume and retain more and more of that ballast business, right? So the reinsurance industry had been shoved way out on the volatility tail and didn't have that ballast premium. And that really hurt the business overall. I'm not talking about any individual company, just the business's attractiveness overall. So that was one, can you call it an insight? Feels a little bit self-congratulatory, but that was one observation. How about if we call it an observation? And the other observation was that since about 2002, the best underwriters in the world, or so let me say some of the best underwriters in the world that weren't already chief underwriters or heads of divisions inside big insurance companies, were trying to figure out a way that they could either start or join an MGA or an MGU to really attack their specialist area. And this is especially true in specialty insurance, right? And I'm not talking about the mass market classes of business where scale is probably the primary consideration, but rather in the specialty markets, we saw this flood of real underwriting talent into the MGA, MGU space. And if you combine those two, what you'd say is, geez, I'll always bet on an owner-operator of an MGA, MGU out hustling an underwriter inside a big monolithic insurance company. That seems fair, right? We've seen that across lots of other industries as technology democratizes things, right? As it gets cheaper and cheaper and you don't need to buy a mainframe, all of a sudden individuals can break up the value chain and become really, really efficient compared to the sort of big monolithic vertically integrated actors, right? And again, you've seen that in a number of different industries. I think insurance was slow because we have technology and regulation the two bulwarks of a of a
Yeah.
slow moving industry, right? As those started to fall away, we felt like, we being the folks at the beginning of Accelerant, we felt like it was clear that an organization designed to serve the needs of MGAs, because to our knowledge, there is not one out there that says the only thing we do is serve MGAs other than Accelerant. But, well, that's all we do. So we serve MGAs. And on the other side, what we say is we're not going to buy reinsurance in a predatory way. It's a little bit extreme, but that's the way I like to say it. We're not going to try and figure out what's the most clever reinsurance structure where I can give up the least juice, the least profit, and get rid of the most risk. Rather, let's approach it differently. Let's say Accelerant wants to be paid a fee to run a platform, right? To transform, to source, manage, and monitor a portfolio of specialty insurance on behalf of those risk capital partners. And we're going to share it with them straight up fair, right? It just passes through our tubes, our piping. So we're really infrastructure at this point, right? Because one of the hard parts about specialty insurance, today we sell 250 something products in 22 countries. So I've worked at big insurance companies. The IT around that sentence, there are CIOs that have fainted throughout your listenership right now when they heard 250 products in 22 countries. We have to help the ladies and men off the ground now, because the thought of trying to do that in some big giant policy administration system is so daunting, right? So essentially what these risk capital partners are doing is, again, they're paying Accelerant a fee to be that marketplace that stands in between, provides technology and provides human expertise. That's a heck of an intro, but that's sort of how it all started. Sorry.
Yeah, no, really interesting. And it's a complicated business. So yeah, really good to understand how that's all come about. You said that you operate in 22 countries. So out of those, what made you pick Puerto Rico to learn?
So Puerto Rico is where we've located one company now, and aspirationally we have another company in the works. The company that exists now is Accelerant Risk Exchange, which is the technology company that does the connections. Puerto Rico is an excellent spot because of U.S. regulatory treatment of it's inside what's called the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. By the same time, the infrastructure. Having said that, a tropical storm is headed down on us this afternoon, Debbie. But the infrastructure has gotten much better since Maria. Talent is here, and the government is very conducive to the growth of business, and we felt very welcome here. So the aspirational company is Accelerant Re. We're going to create a reinsurance company in Puerto Rico. Subject to the commissioner of insurance agreeing with that idea in Puerto Rico, and for the same exact reasons. Great ability to participate in the U.S. regulatory network is such a strength, right? Because people worry so much about reinsurance companies in other domiciles. It's great to have the U.S. regulatory framework sort of cover your company.
Absolutely. And sort of how big is the potential market that you're operating in?
Well, the vast majority of our business will be from outside of Puerto Rico. So just to be sure, we're going to put a delineation. Someone really smart, one of the big consulting firms, put the size of the specialty insurance market for the classes of business in the geographies where we participate at $252 billion. And then, Debbie, as they expanded either geography or classes of business, they got to numbers where I'm not sure how many zeros there are really, like 1.4 trillion. Is that 9, I think, I guess, and it gets bigger from there. What I say to my colleagues is I think we can say we're not exactly sure how big the market is, but I'm pretty sure we can't touch bottom. So, capping out on market share is not going to be our problem.
Yeah, excellent. And can you tell us a bit more about your vision, partly for that evolution you've just described, but also for your vision going forward?
Sure. English is a challenge. I've learned that Spanish doesn't have this problem. When you say your vision, it's a collective your, right? As I said, there's 350, 400 people, and every single one of them factors in to the vision, which is one of the great things about working at Accelerant, why it's so much fun. So our vision is really to push that ecosystem notion, right? And I know it's overused and hackneyed, but bear with me. And what is it they say in literature class? Suspend your disbelief just for a moment, right? What you can imagine is this marketplace where you've got those specialty underwriters that are today housed in companies called MGAs, MGUs. Who knows what they're going to look like in the future, right? Will there be only technology companies that do it, where they don't have any particular underwriting in a human way expertise, but perhaps they've got the best algorithm for, I don't know, motorcycle insurance? Why I picked that, I have no idea. It sounds like a terrible idea. But what will MGAs, MGUs, specialty underwriters look like in the future? I don't know, but I know that Accelerant is going to do their best to try and grow to serve them. Because again, one of the things that I love about working at Accelerant is it's such an other-focused organization. Here's what I mean by that. Our goal is not to maximize our return on equity or return on capital. We don't talk about that. What we talk about is how do we make our members, that's what we call the MGAs, the MGUs that we support, how do we make them as successful as possible, as quickly as possible? It's where the name came from. How do we act as an accelerant to your success? Ms. Member or Mr. Member, and if you do well, we'll do fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And over the 5 years ish, I guess it's 5.5 now. Over the 5.5 years, I'm delighted to say that we've made about $500 million of revenue for our members, and we've created about $480 million of profits for our risk capital partners. So it's a really balanced. It's one of those, it's like those unicorns, the other kind of unicorn, Russ, the win-win thing that everyone hears about, but you've never seen in the wild. Well, if you include Accelerant as one of the wins, I think it's fair to say it's a win-win-win.
Perfect. Yeah, it sounds brilliant.
Jeff, you mentioned earlier your 37 years experience in the industry. So we were looking at your CV as well. You've done quite a decent stint in insurance and reinsurance, getting your first job as an intern in 1990. So how important was all that 30 plus years experience in helping you to form the ideas for Accelerant?
I think pretty important, Russ. I don't have the counterfactual to experience. I've never been not without whatever background or baggage I had. But I guess what I would say is when I used to work with the industry greats, Dick Blum and Clem Dwyer, these are people from Guy Carpenter, way back, giants from my perspective of when I started. What used to drive me crazy about them is their ability to predict the future. And they'd sit, we were all in offices then, and we were in the World Trade Center actually, and they'd sit behind quite large desks and look very pleased with themselves when they were right all the time. And the only downside is I had to turn 50 to understand their trick. It's pattern recognition, right? These cycles that tend to repeat themselves. So the third time through, you tend to be able to know, as they say, how the movie ends. So Russ, I would say that the depth of experience of the team. So the Accelerant team is what should we say, reasonably mature team, very experienced. How's that? We're a very experienced group of women and men, and I think we do have the advantage of a couple things. A, that pattern recognition, where you kind of can anticipate the actions of the players at the next stage of the cycle evolution. The other thing, which is kind of important, is you gain a sense of perspective, and you realize that you kind of have to win the month-long battles. You don't have to win the day-long battles. And it's amazing how little energy we expend trying to win the last nickel out of every negotiation. And I think after 30-something years, probably 20-something years, you realize that who you trade with and the quality of the relationship you have is way more important to your ultimate success than who wins this trade. Because unlike the investment markets, and I try to remind my investor friends and colleagues of this all the time. Unlike the financial markets, we're going to trade with the same people for our entire careers, right? Plus minus 10 people. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but I guess my point is, I think with age and experience comes the ability to see how the overall trajectory of a relationship is way more important than any annual year's negotiation, which I hope makes us easier to do business with and makes us a more valuable partner.
Excellent. Jeff, I mentioned in my intro that you've raised over $190 million to date. Where do you invest the most with the capital that's been raised?
Right, right. I have a question for you, Russ. We used to say that we spent money. You notice that about 10 years ago we started investing money. We never spend it anymore. But I'll go along with it, Russ. Where we've invested money,
I guess when you spend money, you're not necessarily getting, well, you are buying something, but yeah, investing is for the future, I guess, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, right, right. And we certainly hope and believe it is. We certainly hope and believe it is. But I did notice that name change about a decade ago. But where we invest that money. To answer your question directly, I can't tell you exactly where we are, but we're over 250. I think we've done 2 rounds now. So since the original seed round in 19, we've done 2 subsequent, and we've added a number of different institutional shareholders that are terrific additions to our success, almost without exception, right? Everyone's got a different perspective and different Rolodex, and they've all been incredibly helpful to us, which is great. Where we invest our money is 2 main things. The first and most important one is building that platform, the technology to make this easy, the technology that's good enough to have those risk capital partners want to pay us to source, manage, and monitor that portfolio. That was by far the most important spot of investment. The second place where we've invested is while we're using the balance sheets, i.e. the insurance companies that we own, while we're using them less and less over time, as more and more risk capital say, ooh, I'd quite like to be the insurance company in that transaction, right? In the beginning, we had to prove it. We had to show people. And then the third place is we've spent money or invested money is on the team. So we're constantly running a team that's substantially bigger than today's revenue, because it's supporting next year's revenue.
Is that team size at a level where you want it to be for the next 12 months, or is there plans to recruit even further?
So we've got a high touch model, and right now my colleagues are rolling over and they're kicking me. They're saying, "Why did you say it that way?" Because of course, from a investor perspective, what you want to say is we've got lots of operating leverage, and we do. We've got tons of operating leverage to go in the platform area, in the business technology area, in the finance, in the infrastructure areas. Yes, tons. But if we're going to retain what makes us special, or part of what makes us special, is that expert service model. So our underwriting support people that help our members, right, get the best outcomes possible. So our underwriting support folks, our claim support people, and our what we call member relationship people, the ones that are responsible for making sure all aspects of the relationship work, those will grow more or less in proportion to the growth of the membership. So Russ, since we have actually they're fairly substantial expectations in terms of what the platform could do in terms of what percentage of the specialty market, to the point where I'm a little sheepish sharing them with you. I'd rather show you what we did rather than talk about what we think we can do. But let's put it this way. We've got some great expectations. So if you ask us, do we think the team's going to grow over the next 5 years? Wow, yes. So actually, to put in a shameless plug, if you are an expert, please do call us, because we're going to need you soon. Because we're going to need you soon. We're always looking for really talented folks.
Great, and really good to hear you talk about that expert service model being fueled by the people, the experts that you've got in the business. Thinking about the people side of the business, you mentioned that you grew from a story of 8 people together to this 350 people that you've got now. How did you go about establishing a company culture in those early days, and how has that been impacted by the company's growth?
This is so, we don't know each other. If you knew me better, you'd be really surprised by this, because it doesn't sound like me. So it must have been one of my early colleagues that really pushed us. We sat down and talked about it, which is very strange if you think about it. Like we talked about, okay, right now we're this group of people that just left perfectly good jobs. We've momentary lapse of reason. So now we're in this company. What in the world do we want it to be? And we sat down. And we sort of talked about it pretty earnestly, and we came up with, I believe at the time, 5 values, 5 sort of core values. We're now up to 10 values, and each time we bring on a group of folks, like a chunk of people, we try and sit down and we have a recalibration session, because at least we believe your culture kind of is an outgrowth of your values, because your values determine how you do and don't behave, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how you do and don't treat people inside and outside the organization. So I think we think your culture flows from that. So we sat down and we said, what do we want to be? And I'm ashamed, Debbie, if you were at that table, the conversation was kind of negative. And here's what I mean by that. Is a bunch of grizzly old women and men that were a little angry, right? Having worked at insurance companies mostly our whole career, or big brokers. And you would have heard sentences like, I'm sick and tired of silos, right? I'm sick and tired of silos where the US hates the UK and property hates casualty and claims hates underwriting, right? And we said it, to hell with it. The only success is shared success. So that's one of our values, right? So everyone in the organization succeeds or fails to the same degree. There's no bid about, oh, this division did well, right? And another division didn't. So the only success is shared success. And then there was a negative comment about, this one came from me, about the time that I sat in a 14-person underwriting committee where we decided on a $14 million deal. And I remember the numbers were exactly the same. So the juxtaposition was particularly painful. And what we said is, no. We're going to put authority and accountability as close to the customer as possible, right? And then one of the other, I think it was a she, I think she said, what drives me crazy is how, because to try and save money, we're forced to make these pyramids, right? Where you have senior person, junior, right? Ever more junior people. And that means that the people that your customers actually talk to know the absolute least. And she said, it's great for the company, right? Because you get theoretically a bunch of cheap people. But what really happens is they don't decide anything. And they just run around in circles and wait for committee meetings because you wouldn't give them any trust or authority, right? So that's one of our values came out. We're going to hire a team of experts, and what it costs. To hell with it, right? So we admonish one another to never build pyramids, because each time you build a pyramid and someone ought to work for you, that means that someone is less talented or less experienced than you are, and you've just decided on behalf of the customer that they ought to take a cut in expertise. And if you think about it that way, you sort of grit your teeth and hire someone just as good as you, and you divide up your job. So it is a really weird flat structure. And when people join, they're 2/3 excited, 1/6 terrified, and 1/6 confused about, like, who do I ask about this? And the answer almost always is yourself. Or as my daughter used to say when she was younger, worry about your own self. You decide, right? So it's a topic that I and the rest of my colleagues are passionate about. But that's sort of a sense of how it grew, how it started, and how it grew. Now, how do we keep it as we get bigger and bigger? This will be kind of a negative comment too, Debbie, and it's a shame. I think we're up to 42 people have left Accelerant for one reason or another. And the vast majority of those folks that have left because they weren't a fit with those values. They just didn't want to, because none of these values involve like a test of physical strength. You can choose to do any or all of them, right? It's people that weren't, it didn't fit well. So how do you keep it as you get bigger and bigger? You talk about it a lot, you communicate like crazy, and you make sure that the folks that aren't living it go. What do we say? We try and get them somewhere where they can be more successful as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that sounds fair. And I think our next question was going to be around that communications process, because that flows directly out of that culture. So how involved are you in keeping connected with employees, engaging them, and maintaining that level? Because 2/3 of excitement, I would say, is quite a high level of excitement.
Yeah,
So how do you keep that going through their career?
that's all we do. It's all we do, and it's not just me; it's everyone. Chris Lee Smith, one of my colleague who runs distribution, runs an all hands call every Thursday. Like every Thursday, everyone, where we go through the whole list. And the beginning of the list is, this is all secret, so don't tell anyone, because it is. It's the whole playbook for the following week for the organization, right? The prioritization. Then we call, everyone's an owner at Accelerant, so we call them owner calls. We do those quarterly. They feel a bit like a board meeting, where we're reporting back. Tons and tons of ad hoc stuff. In fact, our newer colleagues say, and maybe with some validity, this meeting culture, right? What it results in is, if you think about it, you've got communicating, you've got deciding, and you've got working. Is that fair? That's what everyone's job is. As you make communicating bigger, it's a little bit like a balloon, right? You either do less of the other two, or you work more hours. And one of the things that the new entrants observe, and they're right, is we ought to be careful not to make sure that the duration that we're asking of our folks is sustainable, right?
Yeah.
Because of the enthusiasm, Debbie, I most of my time is spent calling people saying, none of my business, but it kind of is. On Teams, you didn't look great. Is everything okay, right? Or you took that person's head off. That's not like you. Are you going too fast, right? Because again, another one of our values is maximum sustainable effort every day. And what that means is you got to decide what's sustainable, and that depends on the day. Depends what's going on with your family, depends on a million things. But don't let work, I always say, is a squeaky wheel, right? If your kids had a Teams account and they could ping you and email you when they needed something, they'd probably get a lot more attention. So don't listen to me just because I have a stupid Teams account, right? Pay attention to your kids.
That's such a good point. Yeah, absolutely right.
Jeff, we said at the top of the show, and you commented on the fact that you're our 40th unicorn leader. We interviewed our first one in December 2019. And as you can imagine, quite a bit's changed in the market since that time. What we've been doing in this new season of interviews that we've been recording this year is just to ask our guests whether or not the term unicorn is still as relevant now as it was then. What's your thoughts on that?
It never particularly mattered to us. And here's why. You'd have to tell me, because I'm speculating about what other people felt or what their motivations were, which why listen to me? What the hell do I know, right? But I think the premise was a lot around building a lot of value and selling it to someone, whether that was the public or private trade or, and when we built Accelerant, and forgive me for my ridiculous analogies, my father hates them, but here comes another one. When we were building Accelerant, we knew it was a bit of a platypus, and by platypus I mean like a kind of animal that's no one's ever seen before. And what that meant is we were building an organization that really was going to have to be successful operating and trading on its own for a long period of time to prove itself out. It was not an easy or a quick sale either to the public or for sure to what do they call it, a strategic, someone inside the industry. So Russ, I don't think we paid much attention to any of that stuff because we sort of knew that our path was a lot longer and it probably wasn't paved with gold. It was probably paved with a lot of hard work and grinding it out. So when it was nice, I'm sorry, Russ, it was nice because we got to put in one of our applications to form an insurance company, we got to say to the domicile, wouldn't it be neat for you to have your first unicorn? So that's the first time we got utility out of it. Might be the last, but yeah. Because
you didn't make a big sing and dance, when that milestone was achieved.
I hope not. Boy, I hope not. I don't think so, and boy, I hope not. I'm. You know what we make big song and dances about is when our members will hit these milestones of $100 million or pounds of premium or their valuation. Some of them are trading for 15, 16 times EBITDA. That's really exciting that we were part of that success for them. We focus on celebrating those, and again, Accelerant success will take care of itself.
Yeah, excellent. So another topic that we talk about quite a lot on the podcast is AI, as you can imagine. And we've noticed that you've got a .ai URL. So how important is AI for you? And also, how much of a challenge is it to keep up with the pace of that innovation?
First of all, I can't tell you how relieved I am that we're having this conversation now, not a year from now. Because a year from now, I'd probably have to be a little bit sheepish about the .ai. And say that maybe AI stands for aspirational. Well, I'm delighted to tell you that it now stands for artificial intelligence. And the reason I can be so proud is it has nothing to do with me, right? We've got a team of, I guess, 32 data engineers and AI experts that are working on use cases within our organization and for our members. And boy, they're starting to come to fruition. So every week, it feels like we've got a phone call about the portfolio, meeting, Teams call about the portfolio, and there'll be a new insight that's gleaned. Maybe it's a risk score that's gleaned from the information our members collect plus third-party information, and we backcast it to test its accuracy. And I know backcasting has its problems, right? You're asking. It's a little bit like saying mirror, mirror on the wall, but still, it has such good predictability. It would appear in the backcasting. We are incredibly excited about rolling it out prospectively. That's the first thing. Second example. It kind of stands to reason if you think about all the insurance claims that happen in the world, tons of damage that happen to our insured's property or injuries that happen on our insured's premises aren't really our insured's fault, right? Sometimes car or motor is easiest to think about, right? Yeah, my car was damaged, but it wasn't my fault; it was his fault. Well, the task of going after the people whose fault it really was, insurance for job preservation, right, gives everything a word. So that's subrogation, right? You probably heard that one. The hard part about subrogation is how do you decide where to spend your time and money? Because it's expensive going after them, right? So what we've done is using the natural language models, right? We've gone into the claims notes, and thank goodness that we've got this modern platform where we can do that. You go into the claim notes and you mine what in the claims notes is most indicative of a successful subrogation effort. And that model is operating today. It looks like, this is early days and we're extrapolating from 3 quarters, it looks like it will save a loss ratio point. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal. That's like saying I found 10% a revenue for our risk capital partners. Or for our members, it feels like they're, 10%, same 10%, to their bottom line. That's really exciting stuff. And there are a number of other experiments that they're running. And when you say what a challenge to keep up, probably, although I'm not sure, you know what, I'll bet you if you had those 32 or 35 people on here, they would say that it's angst ridden trying to keep up because they know that if only they were in a business like with the Internet of Things and some sensor was giving them clean data, every second of every day of every month, how great would their lives be? But I don't know what they did in a former life, but they're stuck in insurance, right? With the dirty, messy data, and we only have as much as we have, and the quality is what it is, and we can supplement it with third-party data, but they're somewhat constrained. Now, I tell them, they're not data scientists in insurance. They're data wizards because what they have to do to overcome all these handicaps on getting to the data, I swear it makes them 10 times more creative because they call them hacks. The hacks that they come up with to get around these problems are just genius or ingenious. Yeah. So Debbie, I don't worry about it too much. They probably do like crazy. But what I do is I stand on the side, cheer like crazy, and Russ, to your point, invest like crazy.
Yeah.
Listen, we promised to keep you for about 35, 40 minutes. I think we're pretty much bang on that. So I've just got one final question for you, and that's really just to understand what's next for Accelerant. Can you share any plans for the next, say, 12 to 18 months?
Sure. Our answer is the same answer it was, I think, at the end of 2018, which is there are a host of specialty underwriters out there that are not members now, or they are members today, or they're underwriters inside insurance companies and they want to start an MGA or an MGU. And we're going to work really, really hard to be the best possible partner we can be for you if you write that ballast premium. And we're going to grow that portfolio and its diversification in size, because that's what's valuable to our risk capital partners. And we're going to grind it out. Now, Russ, I could tell you about the network effects that we feel happening. I could tell you that most of our growth is inbound now from MGAs asking whether they could be on the platform. I can tell you that, our risk capital is growing like crazy, where we have insurers that are joining quite frequently now, maybe one a month. But I think what's really important is that you keep this balanced notion of we've got to grow it all at the same time and to the betterment of everyone to build out that ecosystem. So what you're going to see is 12, 18, 24, I'd say 60, 120 months. What you're going to see is just grinding it out, because, Russ, it's so much better than the old way. It's so much better than the old way. It's unbelievable. It's the difference between 12 months and 12 weeks. It's the difference between 14% of premium being spent on overhead and 4% being spent on overhead. It's so much better. And of course, you'd expect, right? I've got the zeal of the newly converted, as they say. But it's not just me. There's 400 of us that are running around doing this. So I think you'll see more of that.
That sounds great. Well, listen, good luck with those future plans. But Jeff Radke, thank you so much for taking the time to join us online today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Russ and Debbie, for having me. It was really enjoyable. And before we hang up, just want to say again, congratulations on your milestone of the 40th episode. That's spectacular stuff. You should be proud of yourselves.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Listen, we'd love to hear your comments on today's chat. You can do that by sharing them on any of our social media feeds. Those are all linked from the top of our website at csuitepodcast.com, where you'll also find all our previous shows and supporting show notes, plus links to where you can follow us on the likes of Spotify and Apple. And if you've liked what you heard, please do give us a positive rating and review. If you are a unicorn leader yourself and you'd like to be part of this series, please do get in touch via the contact form on the website as well. Plus, of course, anyone can get in touch with any feedback you may have. And finally, you can find both me, Russell Goldsmith, and Debbie West on LinkedIn. But for now, thanks for listening and goodbye.